tell you how many times I've told students of mine about this exercise, and then they do the exercise and suddenly they sound so much better. It's like I get goosebumps every time I hear this transformation. So I want you to have that same transformation. Hey everybody, Jeff Schneider here. This is gonna be a life-changing video for you if you play jazz solos. If you don't play jazz solos, this tip is not gonna do anything for your life because you don't improvise. Okay, enough with the weird jokes. I'm stalling. This is a weird tip, so this is gonna be a weird video, but it's also a very effective tip, and that's really why you're here. Let's get into it. The thing about your solos that sucks is that you're playing notes you don't mean to play. Now, that's not entirely true. A lot of the times you mean to play them, but just in a very artificial way. You're thinking so much. Are you a thinker? Are you a soloist that's just constantly thinking about the chords and the scales? I used to play like that. I still play like that sometimes, but I try not to, because when you're thinking about notes, you're not hearing notes. You're not connected to the music. You really need to be focusing on a connection with the sound of the notes, not with their names, not with their functions, not with how they exist within a chord progression or a chord scale. So this exercise is going to help you connect with the actual music, which is sort of like an obvious thing that one should do, but it's amazing how many times I hear my students play and it just sounds like they're playing chord tones, and they are playing chord tones. But the problem, as I said before, many times when you play chord tones or when you play notes that belong in a scale, and that is your primary focus, you end up playing notes that are quote unquote correct. They fit the chord, but they don't sound good. So why don't your solos sound good even if you're playing the right notes? It's because there's no melody baked into what you're playing. So this is an exercise that will help you play more melodically. But it's not like what you've heard before about motivic development, or even like the concepts and techniques I've created, like melody modeling, which I talk about in my course, The Soloing System. This exercise that I'm gonna talk about in this video, and I'll get to it, I promise, but this is sort of the preface, if you will. This exercise is, I lost my train of thought. Oh yes, this exercise doesn't require any real practice. You just do it, and it's gonna unlock the part of you that already knows how to play melodically. That's the thing. So many of you guys and gals, so many of you know in the core of your musical being how to play melodically. You're just so obsessed and concerned with the notes and the names and the functions and the theory that it gets blocked. That melodic part of you gets blocked. So how do we unlock it? That's really what this exercise is all about. So I keep putting it off. We're gonna get to it now. The exercise is called the I Love You, My Darling exercise. It's a weird name and it's kind of a weird exercise, but again, it's really effective. It's called the I Love You, My Darling exercise because when it comes to playing more melodically, another way to put that is playing more lyrically. So what we're actually gonna do is, instead of improvising and playing our instrument, we're going to sing. I've talked about singing and the importance of singing before, but this isn't like a skoo-doodly-dot-doo-dot sort of scat type singing here. We're actually gonna use these made up lyrics, these very cliche lyrics, I love you, my darling, and we're gonna use that lyric over and over again and sing it over a backing track. Just pick a standard, and your goal when you do this, and I'm gonna demonstrate it in just a second, but your goal when you do this exercise is not to solo. I just want you to take on this mindset of coming up with a new melody for whatever standard you're improvising over. It's improvising a melody, not a solo. That's why we're not going scoobly-doo-dot-doo-dot, because that's not gonna be lyrical at all. We're just going to stick with, I love you, my darling. Those are the lyrics. You can switch them up in terms of rhythm. I'll give you an example. This is actually a good way to start this exercise. Let's call this step one. Okay, so step one, feel a medium tempo, a 1, 2, 3, 4. And what you're gonna do over that tempo is just say, I love you, my darling, with various rhythms. Don't worry about pitches. We're just talking. A 1, a 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. I love you, my darling. I love you, my darling. I love you, my darling. I really love you, my darling. Now, if you notice in that last one, I said, I really love you. If you are compelled to add an extra word in there because it's coming from that place of, oh, I have this thing in mind and I want it to exist in the musical world. Long story short, if you want to alter the lyric slightly to make it fit what you're hearing in your head, that's fine, because at the end of the day, that's what we're getting at here. I want you to be connected to that which you hear in your head, not that which you think in your head. We don't want to be thinking, we want to be hearing. So if you're hearing something and it requires you to change the lyric ever so slightly, that's okay. The other thing to remember is it's going to get repetitive. We're going to do the exercise in a second with actual pitches, but even if you're just doing it with rhythms, there's only so many variations you can come up with. And I don't want you forcing variations. It's just to explore what's out there. But if you start making these weird rhythms like, I love you, my darling, like that doesn't sound musical at all. Yes, it's different, but there's nothing melodic or lyrical about that. So stick with what feels natural, even if it means being repetitive. I want you to keep this mantra in mind, and that is dare to be dull. Dare to be dull. That's going to be your golden nugget for not worrying about, is this good or not? The point of this exercise is not necessarily to sound good. It's just to build that connection with what you're hearing in your head and to get away from thinking so much. Let's now add the pitches to it. We're gonna just do autumn leaves. You can do whatever standard you want. And I want you to take on the personality, not even the personality, just embody a singer that you like. Chet Baker, Frank Sinatra, Sarah Vaughan, whoever you want. Just a classic jazz vocalist that sings on standards, and that can help you sort of get into this mode of not soloing, just creating a new melody. So your song is called I Love You, My Darling. You're going to pick a chord progression, find a backing track. I'll make the one I'm using available in the description below, but really you can use whatever backing track you want. Let's give this a whirl, and we'll talk about it after I demonstrate. Here we go. I love you, my darling. 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 So I recommend just doing a little bit at a time. And if you're recording yourself, that's especially important and effective because it gives you a chance to actually hear what you're doing and assess without getting overwhelmed by too much information. So you could record an entire chorus if you'd like, but I think it's better to just do maybe 8 or 16 bars and then regroup, see what's working, see what you need to work more on, and rinse and repeat. When you do this, a couple of pointers, some things that might come up. If you find yourself singing notes that lack a center, like they're not in tune, but more than that, they're just sort of ambiguous, like, yeah, it's gonna feel like you're trying to find your footing, like you're musically tripping over yourself. If you find yourself singing notes like that, where you're trying to land somewhere, you have that experience of feeling unsettled and trying to land on a note that sounds good, that means that you didn't hear what you just sang prior to singing it. The whole point here is to hear first and then sing. Again, it's all about building the connection. If you don't have that solid connection between your ear and your voice, you're not gonna have it when you go to play your instrument. If you're making excuses to yourself like,
oh, I'm not a singer, oh, I'm not a vocalist, I don't have a good voice.
That's a cop-out, and you're just fooling yourself, because if you think you can do it on your instrument before you can do it with your voice, it's just not the case. It's not the case. You don't have to be a good singer. You don't have to have good tone quality. You just have to be able to hear something and then sing it. If you can't sing it, it means your ear is not strong enough or attuned enough to sing whatever you were trying to sing. So another really basic but effective tip is to just simplify. Let's see, did I have anything else I wanted to say? Here's another thing. What's really cool about this is if you hear something really clearly and you sing it as clearly as you hear it, even if those notes don't fit the chord changes, the conviction that you'll be able to sing those notes with makes it work somehow. It's like Steve Jobs bending reality to fit his version of it. You can make anything sound good if you sing it with conviction and clarity. And so if you're hearing with that clarity, you'll be able to sing it with that clarity as well. So even if you're practicing this on a tune you don't know that well, if you trust your ear and just go for it regardless, you'll be amazed at how good everything you play will sound. Now, where do you go after this exercise? The next step is to go to your instrument and just do what you did with your voice on your instrument. So you're still going to be singing in your head. You're still going to be singing, "I love you, my darling." But instead of singing the notes, you'll be playing them. And what will happen is, if you don't have perfect pitch or amazing relative pitch, you might try to play something you're hearing and play the wrong note. That's okay. That's actually great. Because what it means is you had a target and you missed it. So many people are playing without the target at all, or the target is like a letter or a number instead of a sound. You want your target to be a sound, not a letter or a number. So if you have that target, that's great. If you miss it, fine. You can work on your ear training, get better at nailing the notes that you're hearing in your head, but make sure there's a target there that's actually a sound, and then you won't be a button pusher, which is the plague of so many instrumentalists, is just pressing buttons on their or keys on their instrument and hoping for the best, thinking, "Oh, well, this note is technically right, so maybe it'll sound good." That's not how to improvise. That's not how to make good music. Don't be a button pusher. Instead, sing in your head, play on your instrument. Really, sing "I love you, my darling" in your head as you're playing. If you want to break down the exercise even more, you can sing a line first and then go to play it on your instrument, so you can kind of break down this process. So I think that's everything. Is that everything? Don't be a button pusher. Prioritize melody. We're not soloing here. We're just coming up with melodies. Just come up with a new standard over the chord progression you choose. It's as simple as that. Don't overcomplicate it. I love you, my darling. Let me know how this goes in the comments. And that's it. This is a long one. I rambled a bit, but I wanted to get it all in there. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.